Okay, so welcome everybody to NOVA Scribes and to the first Retooling yoU workshop. I'll just give you a little bit of history and intent behind this. So NOVA Scribes is of course based in Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia, depending on your geography, is really close to DC, and our town is in turmoil right now. My phone has been lit up by people who are in transition around their careers. And the last time that I was in transition, well, it was a really good moment for me to take stock of my own skill set and to think, you know what, this might be a really good time to switch careers and do something new. And so maybe for you, doing something new is launching your facilitation practice. That's what Retooling yoU is all about. So these are meant to be very quick workshops. It's like 45 minutes each, maybe 30 minutes each, where we cover one concept of either standing up a facilitation practice of your own, or actually the techniques and tools of facilitating groups, okay? This is a free workshop. However, let me go ahead and drop this into chat right now. Okay, we are asking for donations. So I just dropped a little bit of text into chat about what this is all about. We're using a pay what feels right model. And so that is to say, if you get something out of this, go ahead, click the button, buy us a coffee. We put this back into NOVA Scribes. We put this back into good causes, okay? And thus ends that. So for today, what we're going to do is we're going to examine what you could think of as the critical path. So critical path, that's a term from project management. Basically what it means is what are the things that you have to do first, second, third, and fourth, and fifth, and sixth, and seventh, and eighth, in order to stand up a practice or a business of your own, okay? Now, here's how I'd like to do this. I'd like to kind of kill two birds with one stone on number one, the content, which is what does it take to stand up a practice? But number two, I also want to model a facilitation technique of doing a timeline and doing a little bit of brainstorming, okay? Chris, do me a favor, just keep an eye on the waiting room for me. So let me open it up to you all and let's crowdsource this. If you think about the things that you have to do to stand up a business, all right? So for example, I'll give you an easy one to kick it off. Let's say, stand up an LLC. So you got to get a limited liability corporation if you want to, right? That would be an example of the kind of thing that I'm looking for. Now, just because I'm going to have my eyes on the board here, call it out. What else do you have to do if you want to stand up a business? Let me know. Go ahead and go off mute. Just shout it out. Let's create a list.
EIN.
Get an EIN, an employee identification number, which is pretty much the same thing as your business's social security number. I should probably caveat this to say that we're primarily focused on what you've got to do in the US market, okay? And EIN, getting an EIN is one of them. What else do you have to do?
Set up a bank account.
Exactly. So you want to set up a bank account. Okay, what else do you want to do?
Figure out what you're going to do.
Okay, so let's figure out like what our offering is.
Offering.
Okay, our value proposition, what it is you're actually going to do. That's a good one. Usually that comes first. Say again?
Web presence or advertising in general?
Yeah, so you get a web presence. So let's start with let's break it down a little bit. You've got a web page, right? Website that people can go to. What else do you need for web presence?
Like the name of your business.
Yeah.
Okay, business name. What else?
Email address.
Email, okay.
I mean, you're gonna need the domain unless you go to a free domain.
You can go to a domain or you can get a free one. Yep. What else?
You need a brand or a logo.
A brand or a logo. Let's stick with the logo. And here, brand is, you got to do a brand. Brand is tough to check the box on, right? With these things, I want like discrete tasks. Okay, now we have a logo. Now we have an email. Okay. What else do we have to do? This is a pretty good list.
Identify our network. Who are the people we want that we can either work with or connect with?
Right.
That might be able to spread the word about what we do.
Okay, so that would be, let's do network, and we might break that into a couple of parts. Part of our network would be, our, for lack of a better word, our associates, the people that might be our partners or people that we would refer back to or people that we would bring in to help us out. The other part of the network might be potential leads and clients, people that we would work for. Now, sometimes those blend back and forth, but this will come in. We're going to need this in a minute. Okay. What else? Yeah, go for it.
So tools.
Tell me about tools.
Well, I mean, facilitation, there's just like everything else in the world, there's like a million things you could go down there. So like maybe your core function of how you want to, your main 3 methods that you want to use, or maybe your main 3 processes you want to kind of go through so that you understand how to put your presence on the web page and like talk about it, and, you know, thinking about what you're going to do before you actually do it.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm going to put that under offering, but what you're getting at is a little bit broader. Well, it's more targeted than that, right? Like, okay, so for example, if I go up against other facilitators in an RFP situation, a request for proposals, and it's out there on the street and anybody can bid for it, I'll get it because ... What is the unique value proposition that I bring to it? Maybe it's that I focus on visuals. Maybe I've got a certification. But what is our unique value proposition? Good one. Okay. Thanks, Laney. What else you got? What else do you have to do?
No, identify partners, people you want to partner with.
How is that different from associates? And
That's
I'm not
fair.
saying it's
No,
not.
That's not. It's not. It's well. I think it fits inside that, Brian. I think it fits there.
Cool. Anything else? Anything big?
Pricing.
Yep. So you can do your pricing. Figure out what your pricing strategy is. Okay. What else?
Oh, what do you need to do to run your business?
Tell me more.
Supply, key activities and key resources. What are the key resources you need to, for example, if you're a grad facilitator, do you have a place where you can do your prep work? Do you have a stash of supplies? In some ways, what's the basic foundation you need for your business? What are the foundational things you need?
Casey, it's almost like you have a business model canvas there in front of you. Is that kind of what you were thinking?
I'm thinking mission model in this case, but yeah.
Mission model canvas.
very
If
similar,
you haven't seen the business model canvas, that's what Casey just did. Which is fine. There's no cheating. Okay. Anything else that you would want to do?
What about something like a marketing plan, or I like to say a YouTube presence? Start getting a channel, get your message out there.
Okay. So you could think marketing.
Yeah, marketing.
And marketing takes a whole bunch of different things. So YouTube might be part of it for you. LinkedIn might be something else. TikTok might be something else, right? Twitter. Now that's all social media. It may also be just, connecting with the right networks of people. Okay. It's a great list. What else do you need to do to start up your business?
So you have your bank account, but how do you get money from the client into the bank account?
An excellent question.
How do you track it? So, I mean, for like, you can use Square, and there's a bunch out there, right? There's a bunch of tools. I'm thinking of the wrong, I can't think of the word right now, but there has got to be you
want a hand?
Yeah.
Let's call that invoicing for now.
There we go.
Okay. What else? Because that's an important one. What else?
What about like the legalese or the contract?
Ooh, good one.
Oh, yeah. Great one. Yeah.
Let's do specifically in the contract. The legalese part is often called your terms and conditions.
Right.
Okay. Terms and conditions. Whatever else you put in there, quite frankly, your attorney's probably not going to, give you a whole lot about it. So an attorney, though, that kind of opens the door. Are there any like specific functions that you might need to outsource or hire?
An accountant. Who's your accountant? Who's doing your books for you?
You might have an accountant. Okay. So, and with that, you've got your books. Okay. What else?
Well, someone mentioned the term lawyer, right? Is a lawyer you can have a look over your materials?
You might have an attorney. Okay. So just somebody to say, hey, read these terms and conditions, or if you get a particularly onerous contract, there's something that's like 30 pages long, you're like, wait a minute, what am I signing away to? It is a good idea to have somebody just, take a look at that. I like to think of the money that I pay my attorney as sleep insurance. I pay this person this money so that I can sleep at night and not have to worry about, whatever is out there. Okay, what else?
Insurance.
Insurance, that's a good one. That's an important one. Okay. Anybody know what kind of insurance?
Oh, that's a good one. No idea.
It depends on your scope.
Totally. So tell me more. What kind of things does it depend on?
Probably your credentials
Mm-hmm.
and the scope that you're practicing under, like what your certifications are or your licenses are?
Yes, yes. Let's spend just a second on insurance because there's a couple things I want you to be aware of this. Okay, so there's your basic policy that's out there. It's usually up to around $1 million of liability. Sometimes you'll see stuff where your clients will ask you for, well, we want you insured up to $2 million. Okay, occasionally that happens. Have a good insurance person that you can work with that understands your situation, which typically varies from client to client and can turn on and off what you call umbrella insurance. Okay. Now, let me just say this. Umbrella insurance by itself doesn't do anything for you. It just sits there. But what it does is it raises the cap on anything else. So you've got a minimum $1 million policy. Let's say you've got a client who wants you to have 2 million. You go to your insurance person, you say, hey, can you put an umbrella on this for an additional $1 million? They say, yes, you have it for as long as you need to. Your insurance agent will probably get you to try to say, hey, can you just leave it on? You're going to say no. And then you turn it off after the fact. That's one thing about insurance. Another thing is, and this is important when it comes to facilitation, to facilitators in particular, okay? There's a specific thing that most insurance companies will try to get you to buy, which is called errors and omissions, okay? E&O. E&O. And what errors and omissions is that let's say that you're working with a client, you say, hey, you should really invest in Amazon Web Services. And let's say they go off and do that. And for whatever reason, their business tanks. They decide to blame you for that. They say, well, if you didn't tell us to go with AWS, then we would be fine. What errors and omissions insurance does is that it helps a little bit of that liability of a client specifically coming after you because of a piece of consulting advice that you gave them. Now, here's the thing. If you are a facilitator, you should not be consulting, right? You should not actually be offering advice. You should not be giving your subject matter expertise. That's my strong opinion as a facilitator. And I actually use that even when clients are begging me for my opinion. Sometimes I'm in the room, they're like, Brian, you work with 1 billion companies, like what have you seen out there? You guys really need to figure that out for yourself because my insurance agent won't let me give you the answer. You have to figure this out, okay? So what I would say is that if you want to be a facilitator and you want to be, not a consultant, that's important. You do not need errors and omissions insurance because that can really raise your premiums, okay? Quick aside on that. So thank you very much for going down that path. What else do we need to do? And then we'll put this in order.
What about a business coach or a mentor?
You could do that. Okay. Business coach and mentor. Anybody have any good resources for that? There's some good networks out there. Okay. I'll just give you one. One to check out is EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. I was a part of them for a while. I got a lot of good advice out of it. Another thing that you can do is to watch NOVA Scribes because we've had a semi-regular series called your Virtual Board of Advisors, where a few of it we get together. We say, hey, here's the thing that we're working on, okay, and we just get advice from each other. So think of it as like peer networking. Watch for it on NOVA Scribes Virtual Board of Advisors. What else would you add, Casey?
Oh, no, sorry. I was just raising my head to scratch my head.
Oh, no problem.
Sorry.
What else you got?
What about like an actual formal business plan?
A formal business plan? Okay, you could do that. And whether it's a business plan or it's a business model canvas, if you're more on the visual side, I think either of those work well. Yeah, you were going to say?
I was thinking, who's your ideal client? Who are your raving fans? Who are the people that, sometimes called the smallest viable audience? Who's the person that speaks best about you, right?
Yeah, so that might be like really identifying, if you think about like the bell curve of your clients,
great way to
who
put it.
are your raving fans, your majority, and then the folks where it's like, well, okay, it'd be nice if I got a job working for them, but might not happen. So maybe doing a little bit of a ranking, okay? Anything else? I think we've got a pretty good critical mass here. Yeah, Tim, nice to see you, by the way, buddy.
Not turned on. Hey, good to see you.
Hey.
Yeah, I'd say, business development and in the context of, I mean, for me, we do a number of different things, but focusing, to build that that awareness in that niche.
Yep. And so I cut business development as one way.
Yeah.
Chris and I call this pipeline development, okay?
Yeah.
Because we think about our pipeline as our business cycle, going from, for example, leads to this is a person who's got an idea, you know, to discovery, we've had the conversation with them, to proposal, you know, we've sent a proposal, and then to, assuming they sign it, to design, and then delivery, and then to invoicing, right? So thinking of it as that life cycle. Let me do that again real quick. So the way we think about it is you've got a lead who is somebody that just sends out a, hey, can you do this thing? You've got discovery where you scope it, you know, you figure pretty much everything that you need in order to do a proposal. Then you do the proposal. And then hopefully if they sign, you've got your design, your delivery, and then, you know, your everything that goes after that, the invoicing, and then the after action review is something else that we've started doing lately.
Yeah.
Okay, let me take the wheel a little bit. Casey, thanks for grabbing that. What I want to do is I want to share with you, using what we've got here, the minimum viable product. This is absolutely the bare minimum of what you need. And let me tell you, I had to figure this stuff out on my own. When I first got started, you know, I did this big sell to, actually it was the organization who was responsible for the 95 and the 495 express lanes. They were one of my first big clients, okay? And I helped them out with their strategic planning. And they said, hey, we're really excited to be in business with you. Thank you for helping us out with our strategic planning facilitation. Don't forget to send us your proposal. And by the way, send over your certificate of insurance. I said, you betcha. I got you. No problem. The next call was like, how do I get a certificate of insurance, right? And so my point in saying it this way is that I did this very organically, waiting until there was a clear and present need for everything that I needed, okay? So the first thing that I decided I needed was an email before anything else. I got to have something with a decent domain. Doesn't look to have like brian.tarallo@gmail.com. Doesn't look very good. So I decided the first thing that I needed was an email. Now, in order to get that email, I had to get the domain, okay? And for several months, I had nothing more than the domain and the email. Didn't have a web page. That came later, okay? And it wasn't until somebody said, hey, you know what? It'd be great to have some examples of your work, that at that point, I came up with the logo, which was the thing that I needed in order to get the web page. You tracking with me? Okay. Because at a bare minimum, I really just needed these two things to be able to communicate. Now, here was the other thing that I had that nobody mentioned. Once I had the email, and then once I had the logo, the next thing that I came up with that was like wildly helpful for my business was, let's move it like this, business cards, right? Because now I'm doing conferences, I'm doing some facilitation. People say, hey, I love what you're doing. I'm like, great, here's a business card, right? So this was like the really, really early stuff that I did. And then people started to want to pay me, okay? And so how are they going to pay me? Well, I've got to get a bank account, which means I've got to go to a bank, right? I've got to go to a bank. I got to say, hey, you know, I got to open up a checking account. They're like, great. Do you want it to be a business account or do you want it to be a personal account? Well, of course I want it to be a business account. They said, well, great. Give us your EIN. I said, I'll see what I can do. Hang on, hold that thought. So I go back, right? And I look into getting the EIN, okay? So the EIN, that's, again, it stands for Employee Identification Number. Very easy just to Google that if you haven't done this already, figuring out how to get an EIN. It's a form you fill out. A couple of weeks go by, you get an EIN, okay? And it takes the place of a social security number when you're doing things like opening up bank accounts, okay? Now, just for myself, nobody was asking for this. Nobody was asking for this, but the LLC was something that I came up with kind of on my own, but outside of the scope of this, because I realized the reason that you get an LLC, and I'm probably saying this to people who already know this, but the reason that you get an LLC is that it stands for Limited Liability Corporation. Without an LLC, you are automatically a sole proprietor. And what that means is that if somebody comes after you, if you screw up somewhere, which happens, and they come after you, they sue you, which can happen, right? All they can do with an LLC is take money out of the business. If you don't have an LLC, they're coming after you personally, okay? So that's really the difference between being a sole proprietor and having an LLC. There's protection that's involved here. Okay. All right. Let me pause for a second and just see if you guys have any questions for me so far as I'm kind of mapping this thing out.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So you have the LLC, you have the EIN, you have the bank account, you're doing proposal. Do you, if you have the LLC's name, is that what you have to do business under? Can you do business as your own name?
That is a really good point, because let's go all the way back to business name. Okay. Here's what I would recommend. Most people, when they stand up an LLC, they do something like Brian Tarallo LLC. I would encourage you not to do that.
Yeah, I didn't. That's what I'm asking for, because I'm trying to go the other way around.
Yeah, it's kind of a pain to untangle that later, because then you're always dealing with DBAs. If you do a lot of like government contracting, as we do, they're saying, okay, what's the parent company? And you always got to like untangle that. Okay. Now I started the company up as Lizard Brain and then Lizard Brain Solutions, because I couldn't get that domain early on. Okay. And so if we start with the business name, let's roll all this one all the way back to the beginning. If you've got the business name, you can check to see if the domain is available. And I'd highly recommend that you do that. Okay. If you do it on your own name, chances are you're going to get the domain. Nobody owns briantarallo.com, right? Well, I do, but it's just out there so nobody else grabs it, just in case. But you know, you're going to end up having to unpack that every time you do a proposal, or they come looking for you, or you know, any of the rest of this stuff. So what I suggest is pick a name that is, first of all, available, and then later, we haven't talked about this one yet. It might also be a good idea, as long as you're looking for domains, to look to see if the name that you've selected for yourself is trademarked. Okay. Yeah, Kathy's nodding. Kathy, did you have that experience?
I'm kind of early in this process, but was going to ask you, like, where does the trademark piece come in?
Yeah. I think when you're way back here, when you're picking a name, right?
Okay.
Because that way, like right now, Lizard Brain is actually trademarked to me. So that's kind of neat. You know, I don't have to worry about that. I have a friend and a colleague of mine who put all of her eggs into, I think it was called the Doodle Institute, before she realized that eventually somebody else had actually trademarked it, right?
Yeah.
And so she had to do this like rebranding, and there was some confusion in there, right? So I think you do that kind of early. What other questions you got before I keep going?
Why does trademarking matter? Like for a small company, if I'm not doing SEO, if someone can find me through like a search through my business card, or like, why would it really matter if there's another company in the world named my company name?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I'll give you my opinion, and then let's open it up for other people. So I've put a ton of work and energy into the brand Think with Ink. Okay. That's a workshop that I teach. It is a book that I'm writing. There's a lot that's going into that right now. So I'm putting a ton of energy out there. There is another company out there that has put out a website blog. It's really just a blog at this point, but it is Think with Ink. Okay. Wait, that's mine. Think with Ink is mine. There's his Think, something like that. It's something, think around ink, something like that. It's really, really close to mine. I'll have to look it up exactly. I have had a talk with my attorney, and it could be something as simple as sending like a cease and desist and a reminder that, hey, this is somebody else's trademark. To your point about SEO, though, if somebody comes looking for me and they search Think with Ink or something else, and then this other person pops up, there's brand confusion that gets into that, right? Inky thinking. Thank you, Tim. That was it. It's really, really, really close.
Can I ask you one question when it comes to trademark?
Yeah, please.
It's kind of like two options. There's like do it yourself, and there is like go to one of these websites out there, like legal whatever.
Yep.
Which is the best way to go? Which is the most effective way to go if you're
well, I'm not going to tell you the best way to go. I'm going to tell you my way to go, which is I just have my attorney do it, right? Okay. So I just, and the attorney comes in, right kind of in around here, before you do the trademark even. Okay. I mean, you can do a trademark search, but there's the trademark search to figure out if it's available.
Okay.
But then there's actually filing the trademark paperwork, right? Okay?
Correct. That's
so anybody can search for a trademark and see if it's available now. And I would do that early on.
Yeah.
But when you actually get to the point to say, okay, this is something I can actually support myself, I want to turn this into a thing. At that point, I would say that's where you get your attorney involved. Okay. Now, the nice thing about having an attorney is because mine will actually, ping me and say, hey, your trademark is coming up for renewal. Okay. I don't know if legal Zoom does that because there's a difference between filing the paperwork and actually like babysitting the thing. Okay. Yeah, it's I think it's uspto.gov, US Patent and Trademark Office. I think that's the link for it.
I've done, Google's your friend. I went
Yes.
on like a week-long quest of just watching trademark videos to get my head wrapped around the idea of where I needed to be. And the thought is, from my perspective, is when you first start doing it, it's not out there, doesn't really matter. But if you start having a business and you don't have a trademark, someone can come over on top of you, file it, and then it becomes a big issue because you could have first to, there's a like first to do it in business and you can commit to stuff, but it's more money and time, and it just becomes a big pain. And then also you can have the same name as somebody else if they're in a different business.
Yeah.
So it gets choppy. There's
actually, funny thing about that one. So you've heard of Apple, right? Okay. So the Beatles record album is also called, like, their record label is also called Apple. A lot of people have heard about this. When Apple, the company decided to get in the music business, the Beatles Apple label went after Apple saying, hang on, party foul, right? I don't know how it worked out, but that's an example of it. So there's the trademark search, and then there's later the trademark filing. Okay, cool. What questions do you have before we keep going?
Then the risk is you may start early on with like your business name, your domain. You get to where you're like, oh, this could actually be a thing. I might want to trademark LLC this. The risk is, if you don't do it at the right point, you find yourself needing to revisit your domain and your brand overall. Okay. So it's finding that sweet spot of that LLC trademark piece. Cool.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Now, this meant, let me take a step back for a second. All of this may seem pretty overwhelming. What I want you to take away from this is that there is a critical path. There is a step 1, 2, 3, 4, and you don't have to do all of this in one day. Okay. This takes months in order to get through all of this stuff. If you're highly motivated, sure, you can get it done in a few weeks. But doing the trademark filing, I was in business for like 5 years before I actually decided to do that. Okay. Going back to the value of the attorney, though, if you've got an attorney, I think early on, having them write your terms and conditions, which is the thing that you plug in as your amendment at the back of your proposal, so that when you send a proposal out, all your client has to do is sign it, and now you've got a contract. Okay. We handle 100% of our work that way, where it's, here's our proposal. If you sign here, now it's a contract, and that just keeps things light. Okay. Cool. What other questions do you all have? Okay, let's keep going a little bit. So you've got your EIN, you've got your bank account. Invoicing does not have to be terribly complicated. Okay. To be honest with you, like Chris and I, we've been trying to get onto QuickBooks, but to be very honest with you, we still generate invoices just using Word, and we PDF it and send it out. And in the back side of it, we don't use QuickBooks much. I just have an Excel spreadsheet where I list all of my accounts. Now, I have a background in finance. I'm a little bit more comfortable with that. And so I understand the ins and outs, and I know what to give to my accountant at the end of the year. The only thing that my accountant does for me is my taxes. That's all. I do all of my other bookkeeping. I prefer it that way. But let me say this, you really have to dial in on the stuff that you do and you do not want to do. The best thing that I ever outsourced was mowing the lawn and raking the leaves. Okay. And because what that did is that freed me up for everything else that I want. I hate mowing the lawn. I get no joy out of it. I sit there, I'm like, oh my God, there's so many other things I could be doing. So really be thinking about the kind of stuff that you can just give to somebody else. For everything that you don't want to do, there is somebody else out there that really, really, really wants to do it. Chris had a hard time convincing me of that. I'm like, did you really want to do this? She's like, yes, give me this thing. I really want to do it. Okay. All right. So invoicing can be really easy. It could be in an Excel spreadsheet if you want. All you got to do is you could track a number, track when you sent it out, track the dollar value, and track when it came in. And that's pretty much it. That's all you got to do. Let's see. Your accountant, your books, you can do that yourself if you want early on. Eventually, you might want to get it to a place where you're using, an accountant or QuickBooks. The rest of the stuff is really, you know, as it's called for. Insurance would be a little bit earlier on when you start working, but you can get just a basic business insurance. You know, ours is through State Farm. Find somebody local that you trust, that if you need to show up at their office and be like, look, I need a certificate of insurance right now, you got to give me one. You know, we've got one through State Farm, another one through Wells Fargo, and we've got no, you know, loyalty on either of those. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
When it goes back to it's invoicing, but how do you get the money? Like, I'm wondering for tools here.
How do you get the money?
From the client's bank account into your bank account?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of different ways to do that, right? It could be a check, it could be a credit card, it could be this.
Yes.
Also, so I'm just wondering if there's like some tools or things that I can go look at and look into.
Okay, let me tell you something. So like on the first job that I did, where I just designed something that looked like an official invoice in Word, and I PDF'd it and I sent it to my client on like the first job that I did. And then a check showed up in the mail. It was like, oh, this is magical. You know, it's like, I can make money this way. Like, this is real cash. There was like this magic moment. It was like, for me, it was the adult version of finding a coin underneath my pillow from the Tooth Fairy. It was like, holy cow, I can actually make money at this thing. All right. So it's magical. The easiest way to get paid is to ask for a check. Okay. You know, just give us your whatever, give it, you know, send us a check. Here's our business address. By the way, my business address is my home. I just find it a lot easier. There's a lot of other people that will, you know, pay to have mailboxes. The cool thing about mailboxes is that you don't have to check them every day. You'll get a text or a notification when you've got something there. If you want to keep a separation from your home and your business, I like to keep things lean. I don't bother. So check is by far the easiest way to do it. Okay. After that, I would say doing a wire transfer, right? An ETF transfer would be the next. The only thing that you need for an ETF is two things, and both of those will come out of your bank account. One of them is the checking account number. The other one is the routing number. Okay. That's it. If they've got a checking account number and a routing number, they have everything that they need for money to magically show up in your account. Okay. If you end up doing a lot of those, I would recommend that you end up going with a service like QuickBooks, which will do a better job of tracking that, okay, than anything else. Yeah, and in chat right now, you can also accept money on PayPal, Venmo, QuickBooks. In fact, thank you for the reminder. This, boom, that donate button right there, that is PayPal. So again, if you're getting any value about this, buy us a coffee. I think that link should have dropped into chat. Didn't do that for a second. Let's try that again. There we go. You can also accept money through PayPal. Now let's talk a little bit about credit cards. Okay. You could set up a credit card with your bank account, like credit card transaction. The thing is that most of the time, this isn't true for everybody, but most of the time, whatever bank you go with that wants you to use their credit card processing service expects you to do, I don't know, hundreds of these things a month, right? And the fees can be pretty high. We don't do that. We actually use Square. Okay, the same thing as like those little like Square readers, where now you don't even need the reader, you just tap your card. There is an option once you set up a Square account to enter in card information manually. That's exactly how we do it. All you need is the credit card number, you know, the same things that you're used to giving over the phone. Credit card number, expiration date, CVN. Occasionally, don't forget about the billing zip code, okay? And then the email address where the invoice or the receipt is going to go, okay? Once you've got that, you have everything you need to do in order to do a manual card entry on fill in the service. You can do that on Square. You can do that on Squarespace. You can do that on Stripe and any of the other services that are out there.
Are you saying Square now? I know they had the white thing where you slide it forward. Now you can just tap on your phone and
yes,
it just.
You can just tap it on your phone now. You don't even need the little white slidey thing anymore.
That's sick.
Isn't that cool? Which actually brings up something else. Wait a minute, it was there and then it was gone. I'll think of it later. What other questions do y'all have? We get rid of the donate. Boop. Something I forgot to mention. If you do decide to accept credit cards, right, there's always going to be a charge for it. Okay. Here's what I would recommend. Take whatever that number is. Let's say it's, I don't know, 3.5% for the fee, and tell your clients in advance, this is going to be 4.5%. Now that's not lying. What it is it is the admin cost of you actually having to do that work. Okay. All right. You can argue with me on the ethics of that one, but we do that all the time. And we haven't gotten pushback yet. Okay. Yeah, it's not even a swipe on the phone. It's just like literally like tapping it on the thing and it's ready to go. Let's see. I'm trying to think. There was something else, but it just escaped me. I'm sure I'll remember it later, in which case I'll text y'all. We are coming up just to around 12:36. What other questions do y'all have? Casey, that was a thumbs up. Do you have a question, or you're liking where this is going?
Like where it's going.
You're digging this. Okay, cool. I don't need to make it any more complicated. The rest of this stuff that you do is kind of on your own. Okay. And when I say that, let me zoom out a little bit. If you want to have a business plan, if you want to have, identifying what your unique value proposition, this is like the stuff that you do kind of in the background, just for your own, what is my plan? But this is like the baseline functional must have. Okay. That's what I was going to say. Okay. So there is the domain, and then there's the web page itself. Now, those are two separate things, aren't they? Okay. So early on, we ended up, getting a domain with GoDaddy. Then they got weird and creepy, and I wish I hadn't done that. Okay. Since then, we ended up transferring all of our domains over to Squarespace. Right now, our web page, the actual design of it, is housed within Squarespace, and that's been perfectly serviceable for us. Okay. Speaking about the tech side of things, might be a good idea for you to pick whatever office suite you're going to use. We use Google G Suite just because it works perfectly well for us. If you want to be a Microsoft person, you can be a Microsoft person if you want to. But yeah, whatever it is for, I guess that didn't work out so good. Whatever office software you want to use, we just happen to use G Suite. Okay. And that's kind of it. Once you've got that, you're up and running. You're off to the races. Now, we can talk about any of the rest of the stuff if you want to. We could talk about pricing and how we did pricing. But this is the baseline of really what you need in order to stand up. I do want to give you a little bit of a sneak preview. So Casey had mentioned a little bit about the network, talking about associates and then clients. We have another Retooling yoU coming up that talks about the two things that you need so that you can sleep at night. I'll give you a little bit of a sneak preview. One of those is how to do this networking. Okay. The other thing is called the security blanket. And just so that there's no mystery, what I'm talking about with the security blanket or the safety net is what is the money that you're going to sock away up front before you jump on your own, jump out on your own, which becomes your own kind of seed money, your own investing in yourself. That's what we're going to talk about at the two things that you need in order to sleep at night. Okay. Let me capture any other questions. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and stop the recording, and then we can move to the NOVA Scribes Retooling yoU after party.
I would love to talk about pricing.
You want to talk about pricing?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. So pricing. Pricing, I mean, this fits in like when you're doing your proposal, of course. I like to give a rough estimate during discovery, during that initial call. A lot of people don't like to do that. They say, let me think about it. I'll do the math and I'll get back to you. But, I've been doing this long enough that it's like, okay, let me give you the range of what it is. And I always like estimate high, and then I delight them with a lower price on the proposal. Okay, that's how I do it. Let's open this up a little bit. How might you come up with your pricing? What's a good way to do it? Or any way?
I mean, the two ways I can think about is by hour, if it's like a day-long event or a half-a-day event. And then if you get into like multiple days, it probably doesn't not really be conducive to do like 24 hours times like, $200 or $100, whatever it's going to be.
Yep.
But when you're doing the pricing too, you got to think about travel, wear and tear, supplies.
Mm-hmm.
So like all that stuff gets built in. It's not really, I think it's something a lot of people don't think about. They're like, why do I want to pay you that much money? It's like, well, because I got to buy stuff and I need to replenish what I'm using with you guys.
Yep. That is a good point. Let's see, in chat, Tim says we also switch from GoDaddy. When you put your first price ballpark, you have better negotiating power. Price based on the value that you bring is the bigger picture. I love that, Tim. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, I changed my philosophy on pricing. So I used to work for government. I came out of government contracting. When I initially did my pricing, it was like, here is every hour accounted for down to the ODCs, other direct costs, travel. Like here, my pricing thing would be like this. It was like this long. Okay, this big matrix, because I felt like I had to justify everything that was in that. Now there's one number, and I don't even put a comma, in the if it's more than three numbers. I don't even have like cents. It's one number that's there, and like this is the rate. Now, if somebody comes back to me, then we can have a conversation about it, right? But what I like to do is I say, look, we don't nickel and dime you. Here's all the stuff that you get with it. Len, to your point, here's the, we put in all the materials. We do a scanning service as part of all of our graphic recording and visual facilitation. Here's everything. And so if there's travel involved, the way that we do it is we say, okay, here's the rate for what you're paying for. And then we will actually invoice you actuals for travel up to $3,000. And what that means is that we're not going to charge you more than $3,000. And so far, we haven't done that. Now, occasionally we get somebody who pushes back and says, well, could you travel for less than $3,000? You're only coming, down to Atlanta. It's like, yeah, okay, we'll make it $2,000 just in case. But that's like the hotel, the grounds, the all of that stuff. Now, how do you get to that number? I think it's a good idea to practice doing some price buildup in order to get there. Okay. So think about the hours. And then here's something that comes out of management consulting. Think about what your multiplier is. And so when I'm talking about a multiplier, let's say that you're doing a one-day facilitation. Let's say that it's 8 hours long, okay, 9 to 5. How many days is it going to take for you to actually prepare for that facilitation? So if it is 4 days, and that is, all of the calls with your client, design of materials, prep of materials, all of that stuff, then your multiplier is 4 to 1, okay? Then also think about the post work afterward. Maybe there's cleanup that you've got to do. Maybe there's writing up a deliverable and after action review, all of that. Maybe you've got another 1x after that. And so when you put that all together, that's about a 6 to 1 ratio. Now, the more you do this, the tighter you'll be able to dial in on exactly what your unique multiplier is, okay? I got to be honest with you, I am not terribly meticulous when I do facilitation guides. Like most of my facilitation guides, I can put onto the back of an index card, show up, and my clients will have a great time, okay? So I have a very thin multiplier. My multiplier is like 2 to 1. But as you're getting started and as you're coming, as you're coming into your own and developing your practice, it might be a little bit higher. So the point is you want to take that number, divide it by whatever hourly rate you want to be at, multiply it back up again, and then that's the number you want to get to, okay? Couple of other ways you can do pricing. Just ask people, You say, find somebody who's in the same line of work that you're at and say, hey, how much do you charge for a day rate? Usually they'll tell you if you're willing to tell them. Martha, how well does that help?
Yeah, it's super helpful. I think it's the figuring out the hourly rate in the first place, right? Like what's the market? Like what's the going rate for this type of a service in this region for this type of client?
Yep.
But just asking other people or asking them, right? Like do you have something budgeted for this or any money's allocated towards this type of a service or, right? I mean, I think you just have to do the research to figure it out.
You just have to do the research. This wouldn't be the kind of thing that you'd necessarily want to broadcast over a big Zoom meeting like this one. But let's say you go to a MAFN event or an in-person NOVA Scribes event or something like that. And you have a really good conversation with somebody like Casey. You'd be like, hey, Casey, how much are you charging on a daily rate? That's perfectly okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, cool. Any other questions before we bring it to a close? All right, let's do a quick recap from the top. So first thing to do is you're going to do your business name, and you're going to double check your business name by doing a trademark search and a domain. Then you're going to get your email off of your domain. Then you do your logo, business cards, and then you can move into your web page. You might have a parallel track here where you're also doing your EIN, which is your business and social security number. That leads you into doing your bank account. You might also have another parallel track where you're getting your LLC in place. Once you've got your bank account, then you can invoice, you can get your pricing, obviously off your proposals, and then later on you look into getting your insurance. And then much later you look into trademark filing. Your attorney, once that person's up and running, they can help you out with your proposals, getting your terms and conditions. And at some point along the way, you got to pick what kind of office suite you want, something like Microsoft or G Suite. Okay. Thank you very much for attending. Let me hit this button one more time. If you got anything out of this, buy me a coffee, donate. It goes to a good cause. And with that, let me go ahead and stop the recording. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.